Okay, ça marche, we're live. Hello, welcome to today's Hangout. My name's Sandy Levesque, your host for this evening. This is a show about the law of attraction, quantum physics, and relationships slash sex. So I'm joined here with Greg Kuhn, best-selling author of Why Quantum Physicists Do Not Fail. In fact, a whole series of books about why quantum physicists do not do this or do that, which is actually how I first got to meet Greg because I read one of your books and I just absolutely I couldn't stop reading it. I put aside all my work for about 2 days. Well, it actually took me less than that, but I reread it immediately after I finished it, and I was really like touched when I think one of my friends had contacted you and you contacted me and said, well, why don't we do an interview? And I said, oh, man, that's perfect. So thank you for being here.
Oh, you're
Do you want
welcome,
to
Sandy. Yeah,
say,
yeah. I want to say
yeah,
hello. Yeah, I want to say hello to everybody. And, once again, it's always nice to do these. And I, the relationships slash sex, we, I believe, I don't think that people will disagree with this statement, that we have taken on and discussed probably the three most pressing areas or the three biggest areas that people would call their big desires. We did money, and then we did body and weight, and now we're doing relationships. And definitely this is an important topic. And if you're watching, by the way, and hopefully you are watching, because otherwise you wouldn't be hearing me say this. I do want to say that if you have further questions, I don't know that we can really do any of these topics justice in an hour or in one conversation, and we're trying not to strain your patience and your ability to sit and watch and digest. So please don't be shy about letting us know that there's more you'd like to hear, more you want to know. I don't know. I think I speak for Sandy and myself both when I say I like to be challenged with tough questions. I like to try to find out the answers to tough questions. I like to try to find resolutions to tough questions. So give us the tough questions. Don't sugarcoat stuff. So with that said, it's great to see you again, Sandy.
yeah, likewise. And if any of you guys have questions that you want to ask as we're actually doing the Hangout, then feel free to put a comment on the blog page or wherever you're watching this, although I think the blog page that's the place I'll see it. And we'll do our best to actually answer that during this Hangout. And thank you also for the questions we've already received. So I might start with one of them, Greg. And I think I know, well, it was actually one of my Facebook friends who asked this question. I
Uh-huh.
said on Facebook, if you could ask a law of attraction expert any question about relationships, what would you want to ask? And the very first question I got back was, is it possible to attract a partner or a soulmate when you have low self-esteem about yourself, when you don't feel at your top, let's say, at your best? So that was the first question.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I definitely want to address uh, what the science has to say about romantic love and attracting partners, or even something that we might call a soulmate, into our lives. Partners, lovers, soulmate, companions, people like that. And also I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time talking about love, um, and what it is, and I think that can be really helpful too. Is a discussion about what love is, and that part I would want to be interactive. I have some questions for you, and I hope that people that are watching would answer the questions for themselves as well. So, the question of, can I attract somebody very desirable if I have low self-esteem or, you know, in some form or fashion. And what, my answer to that is this. We, if you've read my books or not, let me put it in a nutshell. We don't literally create most of what we experience in the material world, meaning we aren't the sole creator of the material experiences we have. However, quantum physics is very clear on this, and this is really for law of attraction, folks. I think this is the huge breakthrough, if you will, the huge impact on our ability to have more desirable experiences and be more influential, especially with the big stuff. Relationships are the big stuff, right? Uh, we always create our own unique version of every single experience we have in the material world. Even if we're not the literal creator, we always create our own unique version of it. And that's why quantum physicists will say each person experiences her own unique individual universe. It doesn't mean that we I think we may have said this last time. It doesn't mean that a BMW is driving down the road and Sandy sees a BMW and I see a potato. That is extreme and bombastic and an unnecessary exaggeration. What it does mean is that we probably usually see basically the same thing driving down the road. It's a car, it's a vehicle. However, it will have a different meaning, value, significance, and context and relevance for you as it will for me. Now, for example, it might be that you look at it and say, wow, I love seeing that BMW. What a wonderful symbol of joyous expansion and abundance. And I might look at it and say, oh, look at that BMW. What a symbol of greed. The person who's driving it is obviously some materialistic a-hole, blah blah. Well, obviously that BMW has some very different unique meanings in each of our universe. And so when we talk about the law of attraction and quantum physics, what we're saying is this: I may not, and Sandy may not be able to literally create something. However, we can always change the version of what we're creating to be one that's more pleasing. Now, having said that in a general sense, I will say a couple things that we know, and one is the version that we experience, is almost and without fail a reflection of our beliefs. So, the version I experience of a potential partner that I meet, or maybe even the partner with whom I'm married on any given day, is going to be reflective of my beliefs. So while we can certainly do things to have some immediate impact on the material experiences we're having in this moment, long term, especially in areas where we've repeatedly noticed pain, where we're suffering, we can rest assured that we have beliefs in there that are being reflected back to us pretty regularly, well, very reliably, as a matter of fact. And given that that is the case, by the way, I'll add one other thing, and that is this: there's one material object that we will never be the literal creator of. We might be a literal creator of a painting or a piece of furniture or those yellow cabinets behind you. If you are a home builder, Sandy, and you actually literally constructed those cabinets as part of what you were doing building your home, yes, you are the literal creator of those cabinets. And someday, if someone else resides in this home, they will experience those cabinets and they will co-create them. They will create a version of those cabinets in their individual universes. But there's one thing we'll never create, and you know what it is, I bet: another person. Sandy, you possess a consciousness. You are a time-space event with a consciousness possessing time-space event. Now, you're a very lovely consciousness possessing time-space event. I am creating a version of you, as is everyone else, participating in this hangout, as is everyone you encounter during the day. Even people who simply know of you are creating their own individual, unique versions of you. But they're not literally creating Sandy. Sandy is creating Sandy. Sandy is creating her own version of herself, and that is potentially influencing the versions that other people are creating of you. However, ultimately, the creation of you, the unique Sandy in all of our universes, is ultimately our choice, our decision. So Sandy will have a unique relevance, context, meaning, value, and significance in my individual universe. And I can tell you this, Sandy, the Sandy that I create is fun, intelligent, curious, uh, a blast to talk to, energetic, uplifting, motivating, inspiring. And those are great things. And I know that you have done work to help me easily create a version of Sandy like that. But you know what? I'll also say this. You could do everything within your power to make yourself a person for whom it's easy to create a version like that, right? For reasons only known to me, I could still create a version of Sandy that says she's a jerk, she's a bore, she's silly, she's naive, and these are, I know these are not pleasant terms, and I don't feel that way about the version of Sandy I create. But what I'm getting at is ultimately that's going to be my decision. It's going to be my choice, no matter how hard you try, right? So given those facts about what we know about the creation of the material world, I'll answer our friend's question by saying, however I feel about myself is invariably going to be reflected back to me by the versions of other people that I'm creating in my universe. And as you know, the game that I play, the game that I teach, the game that I write about, I call it Grow a Greater You. And when somebody desires to play the game with a romantic relationship, a family relationship, a soulmate, if you will, my suggestion always is to begin by intentionally growing her or his beliefs about her or his own lovability, desirability, value, worth. And when we focus on intentionally growing our beliefs about ourselves in those areas, we'll begin to find them being reflected back to us in more desirable ways, in ways that are more pleasing to us, that incrementally become much more aligned with ultimately our big desires for other people, romantic and otherwise. Certainly the game is very important when dealing with other people. And also remembering that, I don't create you and you don't create me. And your choice, like my wife, she finds me inspiring and handsome and loving and caring and nurturing and on and on and on and on. I made a list for her, and I put it up on the fridge, you know. So, and I don't think she would disagree with that, and I don't say that with egotistic, big-headedness. We talk to each other about these things, and I know that when she shares that, she is describing choices that she is making about the version of Greg that she is creating, and vice versa. And that can really serve us in our relationships. Sandy, I don't know if you have, invariably, whether you have someone who's romantic in your life right now. I'm sure you have in the past, if not experienced it right now. That experience of receiving very pleasing information, if you will. When someone who you are creating an awesome version of, whether that's a man or a woman, responds by doing likewise with you, that's a wonderful feeling. It's so affirming, it's so energizing, it's so uplifting. And sometimes it can feel kind of rare, We say, oh, I can't believe it, I like you and you like me. Who would have thought, I mean, I don't know about you, when I was little, or when I was in grade school, I used to write a note, I would say, I'd have to write it backwards to hold it up and see it in the camera. I would write a note that would say, do you like me? Yes or no, circle one, and then I'd like pass it over to the girl that I liked. And you know what she always wrote on it when she passed it back? You probably wrote this. You got those notes all the time, I bet.
What did she write?
Maybe.
Oh no.
That's crazy. I mean, come on. But I say that, but you know what I was doing is I was in my own, young child way, uh, trying to kind of put it out there. Hey, I like you, and I kind of want you to give me permission to say it by being the first one to say it. It's because it can be scary. We put that out there. If we were both unmarried people and I lived in the apartment next to you and I knocked on the door and I said, "Hey, Sandy, you know what? I'm finding that I am just creating this awesome version of you in my universe. It's incredible. It just makes me feel so good to be around you because the version of you I'm creating is just so wonderful. Is there any chance you might be open to creating a version of me like that in your universe?" Now, you'd probably slam the door in my face and you're like, "That guy's crazy. What's he talking about?" But no, wait, you wouldn't, right? Because you would kind of probably understand. But really, that's what we're saying to people when we talk about a romantic relationship or even a platonic relationship where love is being exchanged. Does that a, a clear way? Does that sound like a clear way to describe it?
Yeah, it does. And I'm just thinking, when you're saying you need to grow your beliefs about yourself so that the
Mm-hmm.
version you're creating of yourself is better for this person who asked, if I have low self-esteem, can I attract someone? I think I know what your answer, but I just want to make it clear for them when they watch this, or if you're watching now. Um, would you say that one of the best ways to do that would be to obviously pay attention to feelings about themselves and then use the process you describe in the books to start changing the self-talk? Actually, as you were speaking, a great metaphor came to my mind about how I experienced this for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll just quickly share this. I used to have really low self-esteem actually for most of my life, um, for lots of reasons, and in particular, as I was a teenager, I started having trouble speaking. My words would jumble up as I was saying things, and they'd come out jumbled up or back to front. It was really strange, and it wouldn't happen every single sentence, but
Mm-hmm.
enough sentences that I was permanently worried it was going to happen, and I could never really relax around people.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was a bit stupid because of it. And I had a huge shift one day about 2 years ago when I was watching a webinar about speech problems. And they spoke about how people that have issues like I used to have, often it's not that they're stupid, they're just processing really high levels of information from their environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that can sometimes mean that the stuff comes out jumbled up, almost like a computer going, it's like, ooh, too much frying. And it
Yeah.
really shifted perspective. So I stopped seeing myself as stupid, which I didn't even realize. I was so used to doing that I just did it all the time. And I started to see myself as, oh, I just process high levels of information. And it honestly felt like when you have you have a really heavy piece of furniture and you need to move it for some reason, but it's so heavy, and you push against it, and you push against it, and finally you get it to budge, and you budge again, and you budge again, and then suddenly it's in a completely different place, and you're not even sure how it got there, but it's not blocking the door anymore. It's not blocking whatever it was. I felt like that with my self-esteem, that suddenly I almost couldn't remember what it was like to have low self-esteem anymore because I'd had such a shift. So that was quite a sudden shift. But I know
Mm-hmm.
that what you teach for changing beliefs, I believe that can be really useful for changing someone who feels bad about themselves. Because you actually speak to this in your book, instead of saying, I'm fat, or, oh, God, I'm so lazy, starting to pay attention to the words you use to describe yourself and then reframing them with something else. Would you agree that would be a good thing for them to do?
Absolutely. By the way, the big piece of furniture you're talking about, was that the big cabinet that was behind you in the last hangout we did?
Yeah, exactly. It could
See,
have been like that. It was,
yeah. So
yeah,
if people are watching this and they haven't watched the previous one, that's my plug to go back and watch that one that we were talking about
yeah,
weight. I
yeah,
totally agree. In fact, I had a woman email me a couple weeks ago and said, "Greg, I don't agree with some of what you're writing. I feel like beliefs can be changed so much quicker, so much more quickly than what you're advocating." And I responded to her and I said, "Hey, I'm with you. I know that there are times where flashes of inspiration, and in your case, maybe it was the authoritativeness. I mean, the authority behind what you were hearing, right? I mean, you had so much, you invested so much authority and gave so much authority to the source of that information that when you heard it, you embraced it totally. You said, "Wow, uh, gosh, my whole life I've always thought about this in such a incorrect and self-incriminating manner. Turns out I was totally wrong. Actually, my processing, inadequacies really aren't inadequacies of intelligence or ability. They're I'm actually kind of an advanced thinker, and wow, right there on the spot. But the reason that I don't write about that kind of change is simply because if somebody, to me, if somebody is experiencing repeated pain and misery, very often that person has tried things like positive affirmation and positive self-talk and has found them to be lacking for good reason, because most of the time, unless that information we're hearing has an incredible amount of authority behind it and hits us at a time when we're open, uh, and additionally, is very believable to us. Uh, it is fool's gold, if you will, to try to do a quantum leap, because our subconscious is so guarded about our beliefs that we have. What I would say is, if I were talking to, if we were talking and or sharing a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, uh, yeah, you don't drink coffee, do you? It's tea.
yeah.
Uh, See, I'm starting to learn some things. We're starting to get to know our little even habits. By the way, is your dog there?
Oh, yeah, but he's sulking because he thought we were going for a walk when I set up the hangout, and then he's like, "You're doing a hangout, really?"
Oh no, you're
He's
giving him an
sulking in the
association
room.
with me of being deprived of his pleasure.
Yeah.
Like every time he sees me or hears my voice, he's like, yeah, yeah, I know. Well, my dog Sam is laying beside me right now, and she's
Oh,
filling the room with her doggy odor, which I actually enjoy. The So if we're talking, sitting down with a cup of tea, and you're saying to me, Greg, I don't know what it is. I I went out on a few dates with this guy, and I felt like I really liked him, and you know what? He turned out to be the same problem I always have with men. I mean, hopefully it's not something serious. Like I think some people might say, wow, I wind up, finding an angry person, or I wind up finding an abusive person, or wind up finding a dishonest person. Uh, why do I do this? And or maybe it's just simply, gosh, I keep, where are all the good men? Where are all the good women? I seem to find all the losers, or all the goofballs, or all the immature ones, or we may have said these things. We've heard friends say these things, and I would recommend that those things, as well as you said, pay attention to our feelings, and say, hey, that feeling that I'm having, any feeling we have, is information. It's information about whether our beliefs are aligned or not aligned with our desired outcome. Uh, Additionally, the material experiences we have, the reflections that we experience of our beliefs, that's information too, and that's really good information. If I say, my conscious desire is to have a great relationship with my sons, and yet what I experience continually is we get in arguments with each other. We yell at each other. I say hurtful things that I regret later, and they slam their door shut and tell me they hate me. Or maybe if my conscious desire is to have a wonderful, loving, intimate, open, vulnerable relationship with a soulmate, yet in what I find is that I shut down. I push the person away. The person may prove to be incapable or unwilling of going there with me. If I'm having these experiences repeatedly, my feelings are important, but those experiences are important too, because typically, and you know this as well as I do, Sandy, if we rely on our eyeballs and ears for evidence, we tend to blame ourselves, right? We say, this displeasing experience is a reflection of me. I'm not good enough. I'm doing something wrong. I'm a loser. Wow, I can't attract a good partner. I can't be a good parent. You know, and invariably, that is a total abuse of this wonderful information that we're constantly receiving, because those aren't reflections of me. Those aren't reflections of Sandy. Those are reflections of our beliefs. And our beliefs, 99% of our beliefs, if not all of them, we didn't choose them. They were given to us. They were bestowed upon us by well-intentioned people who were doing their best to protect us and could only teach us what they knew, right? But they instilled them in us in childhood, and we have gone through into adult life. We haven't known that our beliefs are being reflected back to us, and we haven't understood that our beliefs are subjective and changeable, because now as adults, if we pay attention to those experiences and we say, wow, that is a very displeasing reflection, whatever belief that's in there, I don't like the reflection it's creating. And we don't have to go in and intensively identify the belief that's creating the reflection. All we have to do is to say, okay, that desire, I'm continually creating reflections of that desire that are very displeasing to me, right? So all we have to do in the process that I teach and write about is we simply intentionally raise our emotional perspective regarding that desire. And if we do it intentionally enough and patiently enough and believably enough, by doing it in very small, believable increments, once we get up to, well, actually, I mean, think about this. Logically, if our reflections, if our material experiences are reflections of our belief, the minute that I give myself a belief uptick, one tick up what I call the emotional reference chart, my reflection is going to change. And my reflection is going to be slightly more aligned with my ultimate desires or my conscious desires for that thing, for that outcome. And so that creates quite a bit of motivation. It's very rewarding. Well, the higher up the scale we go, the more pleasing, the more aligned our reflections are, till we get to the point now where the reflections that I am able to create without a whole lot of effort are so pleasing regarding my sons and my wife and my parents and my sister and people I work with and friends that I have. In fact, people who come in contact with me as an author, I always say, if you look at my blog and look at my comment section, or you send me an email, I always say, Sandy, thank you for giving me an opportunity to be of value to you. And I mean that, because whether it's my wife or an interview or someone who emails me or leaves a comment on my blog, you are deciding to give me that. I didn't come into anyone's life as, like I didn't come into my wife's universe as the greatest stud who ever lived, and there was no way she could have created anything except a wonderful version of me. No, she decided to do that, right? She's giving me that. It's a gift that she's giving me, and it's a gift that I give her, and it's a gift I give you, and it's a gift you give me. It's not relegated to romantic exchange, certainly. It's any exchange that we have.
Yeah, and I love that, Greg. And actually, just a practical example of what you're just speaking to here with the emotional reference chart. I was chatting to a friend. Hi, Glenn, if you watch this, who actually connected us, and yeah, and he was saying that it was quite funny actually. He had been using that chart, which is available for free actually on Greg's website, and he was looking at, okay, how do I feel about money on this emotional reference? In other words, what emotions do I have about money? And he rated very highly because he doesn't have any weird he feels good about money. He sees the benefits of it. He enjoys it, and it was just a good feeling. But then when he looked at one of the businesses that he's been setting up and running, he instantly there was a huge difference, and it felt really like, "Ugh, I don't like doing this. I'm not good at it. It's hard. It's
Hmm.
never going to work." And it was a real, just a complete contrast. So it's
Yeah.
growing your beliefs is about realizing where you're at, and then knowing that you can change it and get to a point where you do feel good about yourself, or you do feel good about whatever it is you want to change the beliefs about. And I just realized actually that I misread the question. But it's funny because I think that question obviously wanted to be asked because it was so clear in my mind. What he actually asked, this wasn't the same person, it was someone on Facebook who asked me, if I, is it possible to love someone entirely even though you don't love yourself?
Mm.
So I guess that could
Mm.
be in quantum physics terms
Yeah.
put as, is it possible to create an amazing version of someone even though you don't have an amazing version of yourself? So I'm interested to know what
Here.
your thoughts are on that, Greg.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And before I answer that, I just want to put in a quick plug, piggybacking on what you shared about Glenn's experience, and that is, I think it's very natural for any of us, me included, to minimize perhaps the need to, intentionally raise our beliefs into alignment with our conscious desires because let's take relationships for example. I think regardless of what my current experiences are with relationships, if they happen to be displeasing, if Sandy asks me, well, Greg, how do you feel about relationships? I'll say, well, they're wonderful. I desire them as much as anything else, and they're special. And they're some of my favorite things in the world. I love having those exchanges, and those are my conscious desires. It's really important for me to pay attention to the reflections I'm experiencing, because if there's an incongruence, if my conscious desire, wait, let me wait, that's two. If my conscious desire is here and my reflection, what I'm experiencing is here, that means that you're guaranteed that your beliefs are not aligned with your conscious desires. Because when you experience this, and think about this too, Sandy, just the logic of it. Things that we are experiencing, manifesting, creating, that are aligned with our desires for it, we don't even think about those things. In fact, we take them for granted. We certainly don't sit around and have discussions about how to manifest them, right? What we talk about are the things we're not experiencing the way we want. And therefore, that is some added, if you will, some added evidence that when our beliefs are lined up, the quantum field just takes care of it. I mean, take something that you're very successful with. Let's say hypothetically, your exercise. You're an exercise instructor. I know that, and you do Zumba and you do other fun stuff, and you're very successful with it, and you're very engaging, and you don't even really. It's a joy for you. You don't have to think twice about it. For you, it comes very naturally. You you meet people. Your classes are full. I mean, it just that's the way it works for you, right? But I promise you that there are people all around the world who desire to be a Zumba instructor. And for them, it's incredibly difficult. In fact, they just feel like they can't possibly figure out how to do it successfully. Well, because their beliefs and their desires aren't aligned, right? For you, you don't sit around and think, well, how could this possibly work for me? And I'm not teasing people who feel that way. But for me, maybe I'm sitting here saying, I can't see how I could possibly be a successful Zumba instructor. How could this? And somebody says, well, Greg, if you align your beliefs with your desires for it, and of course I sit around and think, well, how could the quantum field even work that out for me? It seems so impossible, so complicated. But yet you, with aligned beliefs, you don't worry about it. You don't think about it, right? You're just like, hey, it just works. It happens, right? Well, with relationships, we, you know, if we're frustrated like that and we think, well, how can I meet somebody? And, I don't know anybody. And every time, I go, well, I would say this, when I was single, I met women all the time. In fact, I even met a few men, even though I'm not interested in men. I'm just saying, I would go to the grocery store and I would, wheeling down the aisle, there's a beautiful woman. We start talking. I'm not a sleaze bag. I'm not like, hey, baby. But she's attracted to me. I'm attracted to her. I had the feeling like anytime I left my house, I'm going to meet somebody. Well, that's simply because I was playing Grow a Greater You on my beliefs about my lovability, my desirability, my worth and my value. There was a time in my life I didn't feel that way, right? I went out into the world. I left my front door, and what I saw was a world where I never meet anybody. I can't meet any women. No women are interested in me, and I'm not teasing someone who feels that way. What I'm saying is, the only work we need to do is raise our beliefs. The quantum field takes care of everything, as we've all experienced in many areas of our lives. And you said, like, the real question is, can we love somebody completely if we don't love ourselves? And what I would say that quantum physics tells us is that if my own beliefs about lovability, desirability, value, and worth, which I guess we could call that self-love, self-acceptance, self-actualization, if my beliefs about those things are not in line with my desires for a romantic relationship, the problem is this, and I bet we've all experienced this to some extent. Invariably, I'm going to wind up seeking a partner who will give me those things, right? Like, if I don't feel that way about myself and I meet Sandy and I say, wow, look at Sandy. She's vibrant. She's bright. She's attractive. She's got yellow cabinets. All the things that I want, in a woman. Well, I'm attracted to those things because they're absent in me, and I want you to give them to me. It doesn't work that way. Hopefully no one's experienced that in really painful ways, but I bet a lot of people have. That's the quantum explanation for why those kinds of relationships don't work, because you can't give them to me, unless you're willing to get up every single day and devote a tremendous amount of energy to giving me those affirmations constantly, continually. Nobody wants to do that, Sandy. If you've ever been in a relationship like, with somebody like that, it's like being their mom or their dad. It's very unattractive. It's very unappealing. And as much as we might care about the other person, eventually we're like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I can't be your source of love, self-love, self-acceptance, self-worth, desirability, lovability. If you don't feel that way about yourself, I have to stop. This isn't the job I signed up to do,
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great answer. I read a book actually at the weekend where she described it beautifully. It was like it was actually Eat, Pray, Love. I'm a bit behind the
Elizabeth Gilbert.
times.
Yep.
It was a huge bestseller quite a few
Yeah.
years ago. I'd never even heard of it, but I've come across it several times now. And she
By the
described
way,
how,
Sandy, there's another book you should check out. It's called Great Expectations by Charles Dickens.
oh, who's he? No,
You'll
I'm
love it.
joking. Ah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I'm teasing you. And I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, a new book. Um, it's like I'm always doing this. Like I started getting crazy into Nirvana in about 2005.
Hey.
my my friends are like, "Have your musical taste really not evolved?" I was like, "They never even started with Nirvana." But what she says in Eat, Pray, Love, it's like a memoir, and she was describing how in this very tumultuous love affair, it was like she would kind of merge into someone every time she fell in love with them,
Mhm.
and like always eat up their soul because she wanted to have the soul, and she was lacking a lot of self-esteem in herself
Mhm.
and love for herself, and it was a very vivid description of kind of like merging into someone, and I think that's a great description of what you were just saying, because what happens with that usually is the other person doesn't want to be merged into or have their soul eaten up, and they might enjoy it for a short time, but then they start to push away, and that's exactly what you were just alluding to. And just something I wanted to quickly add is that if someone is suffering with low self-esteem, and I think it's really linked to this whole topic, I really recommend something called the 30-30-30 plan.
Hmm.
And it's not a weight loss plan.
Uh-huh.
It's excuse me. I actually make everyone who works with me and my team, what I do online, do this plan because it changes people so much. It changes you from the inside out, and that's actually why I was reading your book, Greg, because I was following the plan. And the plan is you read 30 minutes a day and you listen to something, some kind of empowering or something personal development related, or audio for 30 minutes as well, and you do that for at least 30 days. I actually recommend even longer. What usually happens is that after 30 days, you don't want to stop, because I think of it like a soul workout, in the same way that if I go a couple of weeks without doing any physical movement, I start to feel strange in my body. It's the same with, for me, reading and getting new ideas and listening to other people's experiences and their advice and what they've done that's worked. It's like a workout for here.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'd say if you do that consistently, your self-esteem will start to shift. It's almost guaranteed. It can't stay the same if you're really consistent with this. So I recommend that as well.
Beautiful.
And then we had yeah, we had another question actually, which was kind of different topic. I really like it. Obviously, still on relationships and sex, and it was from Tanaje, who asked, "How much does the other person influence things?" Let's say that you're wanting to attract someone into your life, or you've met someone
Yeah.
and you're wanting to attract them to be a partner or whatever. How much, when it comes to looking at this from a quantum physics point of view, how much does the other person affect what you can do as a creator?
There are a number of things, okay, and one of them is that obviously the more uh, the more I stay focused, the more I play grow greater you, if you will, the more I stay focused on growing my beliefs, which now hear this out, because playing grow greater you, what it does is it shifts the paradigm, because for most of us, we grow up, I know I did, believing that if I'm being displeased, what I need to do is, reach out to the thing that's displeasing to me and change it, So if my partner is displeasing me, I need to sit my partner down and say, hey, listen, you know, here's how you need to act because I'm displeased. You need to act this way. You need to say these things this way. You need to do these things that way, right? And that's a pretty standard response in a world that we, still allow to be governed by our eyeballs and our ears. It's a very natural response. Um, when I stay focused on playing Grow Greater You, instead of constantly trying to adjust the mirror, the reflection, I focus on what's causing the reflection. Well, when I do that, what I've found is, regardless whether it's in my professional life or my romantic life or my parenting life or my friendship life, I I create opportunities. I increase the opportunities and the potential that other consciousness possessing time space events have to create pleasing versions of me in their universe, to want me in their universe, right? I know I can't guarantee that other people will want me in their universe, but I certainly up the ante or increase the odds by focusing on me, right? Now that's one thing, and that's very tangible. Now another thing that we can do, how much influence do we have? The version of you that I create has a can I would say does have a tangible effect on the version of me and our relationship that you're creating. I would say that's almost always true. If I let's say if I meet somebody and in my first assessment of that person, maybe I'm seeing, feeling some negative feelings, right? Now there may be some good reason for me to pay attention to that. I might say, hey, that person might, I'm not talking about being in an alleyway at night and, here comes a strange man with a ski mask on, and I say, oh, that's just, well, yeah, I might want to turn around and walk the other way, right? And even maybe in situations where it's not quite so literal. Uh, there may be some reason to put some distance and keep some safe boundaries between me and other people. But I will say this, the care that I take to always tell myself the best feeling believable story about someone else helps them create a better story, a better version of me, because our relationship is, that energy is tangible, right? And not just in the sense that they see me smile, they see me look them in the eyes, they see me, acknowledge their importance as a human being and listen to what they have to say, right? It's also tangible on an energy level. And I do think that if the other person is, likes him or herself enough to believe that other people can like him or her, that energy is felt. When I say, hey, you may not be my exact cup of tea as a person, but I am intent on figuring out a way to create a good version of you in my universe. We may not become best friends, we may not become partners, we may not even become friends at all, but I make it my business to figure out a way to create a good version of someone uh, as authentically as I possibly can, and that has a tangible effect. So when I do that, there's another way that I can affect. If I'm meeting Sandy, and and I say, wow, what a awesome version of Sandy I'm creating. I want to have a relationship with Sandy. Um, and I've been playing Grow Greater You, and I've been building my own beliefs about my own, lovability, desirability, all those things. Uh, that's going to be tangible to you. You're gonna see that, you're gonna feel that energy, and you're gonna say, wow, there's a guy who, obviously likes himself and feels good about himself, and I can sense that, I can see that, right? And that may be very attractive to you. And additionally, if I'm creating a wonderful version of you in my universe, that's going to be tangible to you too. And you might very well say, oh wow, look at this guy, Greg. What a nice version of me he's obviously creating. It's appropriate, and yet it's also, kind and loving and uplifting, and that sort of thing. Well, yeah, you may very well feel more motivated to return that to me, and create. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to us dating or getting married or even becoming really good friends. Ultimately, those are still going to be our choices, right, on how we want to continue to create our version of the other person and the relationship itself. In fact, how we want to create our individual version of ourselves, for that matter. But we can certainly add potential to the outcome that we're desiring, right? So my version of other people, yes, absolutely, that has an effect. Not guaranteed, a certain effect, but does it have an effect? Yes, it does. And my version of myself has an effect as well. Once again, no guarantee of a certain outcome, but it certainly does have an effect. So yeah, definitely, we can have an effect on other people. In fact, we do have an effect on other people.
Okay, I'm back. I muted myself because I've been coughing, and then I couldn't come back. So I was just saying that's great news, Greg, because I have a crush on Johnny Depp's. So
Hey, you never know. You
I
may
made a
be,
video.
yeah, in Portugal, he may be, making a movie there soon.
Yeah, I actually made a video about a year ago saying why I was the perfect wife for him
Uh-huh,
as a
uh-huh.
joke. Um, and
He loves yellow cabinets, by the way.
yes,
I think I remember reading that. So,
so
and also fans. When you hang big Oriental fans on the wall. By the way, that's a plug to try to get people to watch our first two videos.
our first hangout, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
How to that was yeah, that was what we covered. the law of attraction more just generally. But I
Hmm.
love going deeper into these topics because it just allows you to get more ideas, I think, for how to really use it. Because sometimes it's
Hmm.
easy to hear the theories of it, but to actually know, okay, well, I would like to lose weight or to create better money or attract a soulmate or
Hmm.
actually one of the questions that I had was, and I think we'll probably have to finish with this one,
Okay.
but it was, and we've kind of touched on it, but I don't think not. I think there could be more to be said.
Uh-huh.
It's the classic law of attraction thing where people say if you want to attract something, you need to be that vibration already. It's like
Hmm.
you were saying, you need to have created a version of yourself where you know that that's basically going to happen. And so that can obviously be quite tough to do if someone's feeling like, well, I don't have a soulmate or I don't have a history of good relationships.
Hmm.
How do I feel like I've already got it when I don't really know what it is? I don't know how it feels.
Hmm.
Um, how do I create that feeling to
Hmm.
shift the feeling of why don't I have this already? Like, what would you
Hmm.
suggest
Hmm.
to someone who's perhaps feeling like that? Because I can sense
Great.
that some people that is their question.
That's a great question. Very important question. And I have some very specific answers, okay? And the same answers can certainly be applied to, these answers could be applied to money. They could be applied to, our body, losing weight or, whatever the case may be. Two things. One is, uh, keep in mind that it is okay to have beliefs that are not aligned with our conscious desires, okay? We're not to blame for that. And from this point forward, we now have the freedom and the authority to raise those beliefs into alignment. And we are assured, because that is how the universe works, that as our beliefs raise, our reflections that we're creating in the quantum field are going to change. Okay? Now, in the meantime, okay, maybe I've been experiencing pain, disappointment, maybe even misery regarding, relationships. So what do I do while, and I can't advocate enough for intentionally raising my beliefs into alignment, in regards to my own lovability, desirability, value, meaning. That is where all the payoff is, okay? Because we're going to continue to see those reflections. But in the meantime, before we get up on the emotional reference chart high enough that we start to say, wow, this is, these reflections I'm now experiencing. And by the way, the reason that law of attraction teachers say you be what it is you want to manifest is because what I'm manifesting, what I'm creating, or maybe it's more accurate quantum wise to say what's being reflected back to me are my beliefs. So what I am is being reflected back to me, right? So
Mm.
here is a great trick, if you will. You can trick the quantum field while you're in the middle of the process and really produce some very pleasing energy, okay, that definitely gets you headed in the right direction and opens up windows, opens up opportunities, opens up potential, at least in an energetic fashion. And that is this: uh, if you want to do this with relationships, what I would suggest is you want to find or you want to decide upon some sort of a totem or a token that's going to represent for you a relationship that you desire, right? And you want it to be something that you see and experience all the time, right? Like, for example, in relationships, if my desire, with money, I say find manifest pennies, okay? With our body, say changing our body, I say manifest people with pleasing body shapes, right? For relationships, I say manifest seeing uh, relationships on TV, in print, on billboards, out in public, two people together, loving each other, enjoying each other's company, in love, happy, even if it's an advertisement and it's, really just contrived
Great.
for the advertisement, right?
Yeah, actually, Greg, I don't know if you, I can come back to it in a minute. I just want
Mhm.
to, I have a real life example of this, a really,
Sure.
really good one. So, but maybe finish the point you're making, and then I can just add it as
Okay.
an example.
Well, I'll say this. Find, like I said, a totem. For me, as a relationship, it is I will see manifest, I will manifest, happy couples. I don't care their age, I don't care their gender, I don't care the type of happiness they're sharing, I don't care where I see them. It's TV is fine. Magazine ad, fine. Newspaper, fine. Billboard, that's fine. In the grocery store, that's fine, right? Or uh, and here's the deal. When I see that, I will consciously choose to celebrate that as as if I have just been approached by the partner of my dreams and said, "Yes, I'm in love with you, and we're going to spend the rest of our lives together." Okay? Now, here's the part where we make it believable. If you're familiar with my penny experiment, what we do, because obviously seeing a loving couple in a magazine ad, that's not what I really want, right? Like, I want to be part of a loving couple. So if I try to authentically celebrate that, like as if I just had that desire manifest, that's not going to be believable. So what I celebrate, what you celebrate, is the reminder that the quantum field is giving you, the wink that the quantum field is giving you, reminding you that the quantum field is infinite, it's abundant, it's creative, it's unbound, it's unlimited, that there's no boundary to its potential, to its ability to manifest anything. And here for you right now is like a little wink, a little manifestation of, here, Greg, take a look at this. I can do this easily. I can manifest this for you just as easily as I can manifest a woman that reflects your, fully aligned beliefs back to you, right? And so I'm celebrating the reminder of that photo or that couple in the grocery store. And I celebrate it like it's the 4th of July. Or I guess in England, Guy Fawkes Day, right? I celebrate it like it's going out of style. Now, you might want to choose to do that privately, right? But you get, if you get in the habit and you say, well, this is silly, I can't do that. Sure you can. You can celebrate the reminder that the quantum field is giving you when you are in the grocery store and you see a husband and wife walking along shopping together, and you say, wow, look at that. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Quantum Field. Thank you so much for reminding me of what's possible, for reminding me that you're infinite, creative, abundant, that you can create this easily. And all I need to do is just keep intentionally aligning my beliefs. That's all I need to do. Thank you for this awesome reminder. I'm celebrating it. Wow, this is fantastic, right? Well, I do that when I pick up pennies. I do that. I mean, I do that all the time. And it really works. Focus on celebrating the reminder instead of the event,
Yeah.
or the tangible amount, or how it tangibly manifests your desire. Focus on celebrating the reminder. So what? Yeah, share your example.
Yeah. And I just had some major light bulbs going off as you were just describing that. I've never thought of it that way, Greg, that when you see examples of what you're aiming for, that it can actually be like uh, little proofs that the universe is bringing it to you, that you can celebrate that.
Hmm.
I'd never actually seen it that way. So you just gave me a major aha. I feel a video coming on. But the example that I wanted to share, I think I've actually shared her story once before in our hangouts, but I since found out the backstory, which is a
Uh-huh.
perfect illustration of what you just described. And it was a blogger that I follow who got married this year, a beautiful wedding, and she has a lovely relationship with her guy. Like I love seeing her posts about it because you can just sense that they're very relaxed with each other. He's very funny. That they make each other laugh, and she was sharing that. I think what I shared before was I'll share this first just to give people an example of what this is about. So she was for a long time wanting a husband. Like she was only I think 29, but she decided in her mid 20s she wanted to get married and have kids. and she was very clear about that. And she's a best-selling author as well and has done lots of things, but she was very broody, and she was never meeting any guys that she felt she could click with. And so she ended up going to this women's retreat and asking the workshop leader, I really want to meet my husband, but I just don't ever seem to meet the right kind of guys. I feel like it's never going to happen. I know I'm not supposed to feel stressed about it, but I do. And what the workshop person said to her was, take a deep breath, relax. The level to which you want this, and I can feel that by the way you're speaking about it, it's already happened. It's already happened in your future. Like your days as a single lady are numbered now. Like, enjoy them while you can, because it's going to happen. You can't want something that much and it won't, and expect it not to happen. It will. And this woman, it was kind of like what you said before about someone with authority saying something to you that shifts your perspective. It completely shifted her perspective, because she suddenly thought, oh yeah, she's got a point. I've been asking for this for years. I've been visualizing it. I've been putting attention onto it. Of course it's going to happen. I just have to relax a bit. And so she started to just already know that her husband was out there somewhere. And then what I found out since is that she took a yoga course to be a yoga teacher for a whole year. She didn't really want to learn how to teach yoga. What she actually wanted to do was to hang around the couple that were teaching the yoga, because the energy of their couple was so yummy, is how she described it, so loving. She said that when you're around them, you felt more loving yourself, because they had such an energy of caring and kindness to each other. And so she took the course primarily just to get to hang out with them and sort of soak up that energy and see how they'd done it. And that was actually about a year before she met the guy that she is now married to. And when she was going to, and how she met him is also a funny story, and I promise I'll stop here, because she was going to do like a cross-country trip by herself, and suddenly she got this weird sense that she should invite a guy that she'd met at a friend's party in another city, in another state, that she barely knew, but they'd hit it off. But she didn't think, oh, this could be a husband. She'd sort of stopped doing that by that point after having that conversation with the workshop leader. But she had noticed that he was quite funny and he had nice arms, apparently. And so she had this crazy idea pop into her head, obviously from the quantum field, which was, why don't I ask him if he wants to come on this trip? Because he does the same thing I do. I know he's not got anything on at the moment. It could be fun. And so she said it seemed like a totally crazy idea, but she remembered this workshop leader's words, who'd said to her, enjoy every single minute you have as a single woman, because you're going to be in a couple soon. Your days as a single lady are limited now. And so she thought, what the hell, I'll just ask him. And he said yes immediately. And he said, apparently, as one of their calls and they were planning the trip, I sound like a real stalker now. He said to her, we'll go travel across America, and then we'll come home and get married. And she was like, oh my God, what the hell is he talking about? But that's actually what happened.
Wow.
So I just thought that was a great example of what you were talking about, Greg, with find a token or how you'll feel or something to symbolize that happening in your life. And so she wanted more of that feeling, how she felt around that other couple. And it's so interesting to me to see that that's exactly what she's created, because when you read her posts, you get that feeling, even though you don't know them personally. But it's, what you're talking about, it works.
Yeah, it does. And, a good way to find a token, if you're like me, and I think this is probably a pretty common experience, is look for things in, I can look for things in my life that I generally get kind of angry about seeing. How often when we get those little winks from the quantum field that say, hey, Greg, or hey, Sandy, I know your beliefs aren't aligned with your conscious desires yet, But I want to give you a little wink and remind you of what's possible, of how easy it is for me. So like when I really, when I was really desiring financial abundance and didn't experience it, and I used to see a penny on the ground or a small amount of money, I got mad. I don't want that, right? Or back when I was desiring, a soulmate, when I'd see happy people, I'd go, they're not really happy. That's, look at them. That's a bunch of baloney, or what have you, right? I mean, that's a pretty natural kind of response. But basically, what we're doing is we're saying, yeah, quantum field, I get it. You're winking at me and you're trying to encourage me and you're reminding me what's possible if I just keep intentionally raising my beliefs into alignment. But you know what? Screw you. You are basically telling the quantum field that you are not interested. Remember back that first hangout we did, we role played like going out on a date, and I had you indicate that obviously you liked me, but like you weren't going to give me the goodnight kiss that I wanted, but you obviously indicated that you did like me, and I, being an astute young man, said, well, I didn't get a kiss tonight, but I can tell she likes me. I'm going to ask her out again because I bet we'll kiss next time. Or and even if that doesn't happen, I bet we will kiss. I mean, I like her, she obviously likes me, right? Well, we know that in romantic situations, but we don't treat our material experiences like that. And the quantum field, when it manifests for you, a loving couple, no matter where or when, that's the quantum field saying, hey, I'm not ready to kiss you just yet, but I like you. Maybe on the next date I'll give you a big smooch. So we can feel free to treat it like that because it's real. It's real and it will work.
Yeah, exactly. So now every time I see pennies or anything of the things I would like to go, I'm going to be doing that. That's literally something that's just shifted in my world. Thank you so much. So thank you for your time, Greg, and for sharing the way that you see things and quantum physics. And I just love the terminology. It's really geeky. I love being described as a consciousness holding time-space event.
You're a good one, Steve. You're definitely. You're a very lovely, fun to talk to, consciousness-possessing time-space event.
Oh, well, I know that everyone watching has had ahas from listening to this way of thinking about relationships. And if we didn't answer your question for any reason, and there's something that you would like to know more about, then please let us know, because we're open to doing more hangouts. Again, we could talk about this topic, but you do have to just let us know, because we can't just miraculously guess. So thank you for the questions that we did receive. And go and have a look at Greg's website. It's whyquantumphysicists.com. And if you have trouble spelling physicists, as sometimes I do, then Google will find it for you. It does that. It's magic. So go and have a look at his website. And you don't have a book specifically about relationships, do you, Greg?
No, that's in the works. There's a book about relationships and a book about money too,
okay,
that there's a basic manuscript for. So yeah, definitely. Hey, you know what? Send us a topic or topics, or even go back to a topic we've covered and say, hey, wait a minute, you didn't tell us this. How come you didn't say this? That sort of thing. Because we could do a whole nother show on. I feel like there's a very substantive and helpful discussion about what love is anyway, what it is and what role it plays for us as time-space events, and how it works for us and how we share it and what it means and where it comes from and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I've actually had some realizations about that in the past couple of months. So yeah, I'd be up for looking at that in more detail. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your wisdom, Greg. And let's oh, I just had a mind blank. Sorry, I think my dog is hypnotizing me from the distance, because he's just he's on his hind legs going, here we go.
He's creating a
So have a great
that's very annoyed right now because he wants to go outside.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, oh, come on. You
Really.
humans, you can do this for so long. So have a great night, everyone. Thanks very much.